Members, can I welcome lots of special guests of the Honourable Laine McDonald to the chamber, the President's Gallery as well as the public gallery. And I'll just have a small introduction. Members, we intend to resume consideration of the Loan Bill 2016. We're about to hear the inaugural speech of the Honourable Laine McDonald. I take this opportunity to welcome her family and friends to the President's Gallery for this important occasion. Welcome to the Legislative Council. Before I give the call to the Honourable Laine McDonald, I remind members that it is an inaugural speech, and according to the customs of the Council, the timer will not be used. And as a courtesy to the new member, the speech should be heard in silence. And just for members' information, we understand with crossed fingers that the speaker and amplification system has been restored. So the member will be speaking from her chair, her seat rather. So members, we're dealing with the Loan Bill 2016. The question before the House, the bill be read a second time. And with that, I give the call to the Honourable Laine McDonald for your inaugural speech.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I rise to make my inaugural speech, I recognise the Noongar people, the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, and I pay my deepest respects to their elders, both past and present. It is a great honour and privilege that I take a seat in this chamber in the 39th Parliament. I am proud to have this opportunity to introduce myself to the House and put on the public record a number of policy matters which were of particular importance to me. I will also ask for the Chamber's indulgence to allow me to take the time to thank the people who have supported me along the way. First and foremost, I must acknowledge my predecessor, the former member for North Metropolitan Region, the Honourable Ken Travers. Ken is truly a giant of West Australian politics, and I have big shoes to fill. With gusto and passion, Ken served the State Parliament for 19 years. His contributions were significant and varied, but undoubtedly his most lasting legacy will be his contribution to the transport policy area. He was one of the architects of Labor's visionary Metronet policy and was an ardent advocate of extending the rail line to Yanchep. Regrettably, the issue of congestion remains a huge burden for those living in our northern suburbs. Just last week, it was reported that 1 in 2 commuters living in Joondalup face at least 45 minutes stuck in traffic on the way to work each day. This adds up to 10 days lost per year stuck on a clogged freeway, time which could be much better spent at home with loved ones. I intend to take up the mantle that Ken left and will be a champion of the Yanchep railway line and of creating jobs in the Northern Corridor. Turning now to my own upbringing and background, I'm a proud West Australian who was born in and grew up in Perth. I'm the youngest daughter to Maxine and Clyde. I'm also the sister to Carter and doting aunt to my gorgeous niece Lucy. I pause to remember my brother-in-law Gary, who was taken from us too soon, but is in our hearts always. I'm the partner to Patrick and mother to daughter Matilda. Since meeting Patrick, I have been warmly welcomed into the Ashforth family by Michael, Ileana, George, Katie and Mark. My parents got together as teenagers and have always been able to tell a good yarn about their ragtag exploits growing up in the Melville and Fremantle areas. The story which always captivated my attention was that of my mum going to the Perth Royal Show in the late 1960s and hanging out with the long-haired lead singer of the Valentines. This long-haired larrikin was, of course, the late, great Bon Scott, who went on to take the world by storm with his band AC/DC. Although my parents separated when I was very young, they remain on good terms and are both here in the President's Gallery tonight. My mum Maxine raised my sister Carter and I, who were only 3 and 6 at the time, as a single parent. Not only did she face the challenge of raising and supporting 2 young kids alone, but at the same time she studied diligently, sat her TE exams and gained a place to study youth work at the WA College of Advanced Education in Claremont, which is now known as ECU. Her hard work and persistence paid off, and she was able to earn a degree and forge a successful career in youth work, community development and academia. However, money was extremely tight for our family during her 4 years of study, and Mum, as a single parent, had to scrimp and save every penny to make ends meet. The tough financial times we faced has helped me to understand the plight of low-income earners and how high costs of living and cuts to services most unduly burdens those who have the least. That is why I'm proud to be a member of the Labor Party, a party of working people and a party that understands the needs of working families. I am proud to be a member of a party who won't privatise Western power and understands that everyday families can't afford more power bill increases. My mum's work as a youth worker and her commitment to social justice meant she took me to many protests as a child. Whilst I didn't appreciate this at the time, I can now look back and see that this fostered a growing understanding of the importance of activism, collective action and social justice. My mum's unwavering commitment to pursuing a degree to seek a better life for her girls instilled in me at an early age the importance of education. All of my education has been at public schools, and I recognise the importance of having well-resourced state schools to ensure all children have the opportunity to receive a quality education, regardless of their background or their family's wealth. We need to invest in our public schools, including in the areas of innovation and new technologies, in order to prepare our kids for jobs of the future. An interest in aviation and a strong desire to be an astronaut saw me gaining a scholarship in aeronautics and attending high school at Kent Street Senior High. Notwithstanding me not fulfilling my goal of becoming an astronaut, I nevertheless received a good education at Kent Street and made lifelong friendships with people I still consider my best friend today. In fact, my best friend Ali Vaughan's grandma was the late Honourable Grace Vaughan, who sat in this House as member for South East Metropolitan Province, as it was known back then. Grace was a social worker and a renowned agitator for social change. When preparing for this speech tonight, I read Grace's first speech from 1974. In her first speech, she urged, "As legislators, we should be, with vision and optimism, and with much energy, attacking the problems we find in the social environment." These words still ring true today. Whilst at high school in the late 1990s, my interest in politics and political institutions were forming. 1999 was the year of the Republic referendum. Whilst I was too young to vote in the referendum, I was a keen Republican and had a strong interest in systems of government and in constitutional design. It was also in the late 1990s, in the late 1990s, I participated in the YMCA Youth Parliament. Youth Parliament is a youth advocacy program which allows young people to formulate, debate, amend, and ultimately pass bills. Taking part in the program involved researching issues and drafting bills, culminating in a week-long mock parliament debate, which was held in this very chamber. Not only was this positive in engaging young people in the political process, the hands-on experience has given me a head start in regards to standing orders and parliamentary etiquette, which I may say came in handy last week in my first week in the chamber. It was also at Youth Parliament that I met my other best friend, Craig Comrie. Since this time, Craig has gone on to be a leading advocate for young people and the LGBTI community in Western Australia. And more recently, he has moved to Melbourne to continue his important work. I thank Craig for flying over from Melbourne to be here tonight. You truly are an amazing friend. After high school, I went on to study law and arts at UWA, where a brand new world of opportunity opened up to me. It was in my university days I joined the Labor Party and became active in Young Labor and the UWA Labor Club. It was a time when Jeff Gallop was Premier, and I was drawn to Labor's progressive and positive policies, including gay and lesbian law reform and stopping old-growth forest logging. Thankfully, while studying at university, a Member of Parliament decided to take a chance on me and hired me as her part-time research officer. She became my boss and mentor. That person was the Honourable Sue Ellery. Since being sworn into Parliament, I have asked a number of colleagues for their advice, counsel and words of wisdom to assist me in my new role. Each have told me the same thing, which is Do as Sue tells you to do. It seems like nothing has changed in 12 years. Since graduating from UWA with a law and politics degree, I have endeavoured to devote my professional life to helping others and acting as an advocate for those in need. After completing my articles at Dwyer Durack, I moved to Phnom Penh in Cambodia and worked for non-government agencies assisting those at risk of and victims of human trafficking. Unfortunately, Cambodia is a source, transit and destination country for men, women and children subjected to forced labour and sex trafficking. The legacy of civil war and genocide in Cambodia has seen a country which faces many challenges, including poverty, corruption and lack of basic infrastructure such as clean drinking water. Living and working in Phnom Penh for 2 years, I have first-hand seen these challenges and unfortunately witnessed the darker side of human rights violations. Upon returning to Perth, I'm appreciative for the adherence to the rule of law, the stability of our political institutions, and grateful for free and fair elections where, even when all sides of politics don't agree, we see transitions of government peacefully. Living in Cambodia also showed me the tenacity and resilience of the Cambodian people in the face of adversity. I was humbled by the generosity afforded to me by the Cambodian people who welcomed me as a foreigner to their country. No matter the smallest of villages in the poorest of province to which I travelled, I would be welcomed warmly into the village's home and afforded gracious hospitality. I am reminded that we in Australia are extremely fortunate and we should reach out our hands of generosity and inclusion to those who travel across the seas to become part of our wonderful country. Upon returning to Perth in 2009, I've worked as a lawyer, first at the Department for Child Protection and for the last 5 years at Slater and Gordon Lawyers as an asbestos litigation lawyer. In this role, I act on behalf of asbestos disease sufferers for their legal claims for compensation. The deadly legacy of blue asbestos mining in the town of Whitnoom still haunts the people of Western Australia, and the Whitnoom tragedy remains one of Australia's largest industrial disasters. Not only was the lethal blue asbestos mined and processed in the mill, but asbestos tailings were spread all around Whitnoom town to build backyards, to build driveways, footpaths and even playgrounds. Blue asbestos was transported in Hessian bags to Port Sampson, then to Fremantle, where bags would easily tear apart when being handled. Not only were the miners and mill workers exposed to these deadly fibres, but so were the women who washed the clothes, and the children who played in the dirt, and the wharfies who unloaded the deadly cargo. Asbestos cement products were also manufactured at the 2 James Hardie factories in Rivervale and Welshpool, and used widely in the building industry right up until the late 1980s. Mesothelioma is a particularly insidious cancer which generally strikes 30 to 40 years after the date of exposure. It is a deadly cancer to which there is no cure. The average life expectancy prognosis of a mesothelioma sufferer is only 9 to 12 months. I've witnessed the devastation this aggressive cancer has on sufferers and their families. From the grandmother who has only ever worked with asbestos for a relatively short period of time, handling asbestos sheets whilst holding them for her husband, to the person who lived in Whitnoom as a child and has already lost their entire family to this deadly disease. While some asbestos disease sufferers are able to pursue compensation in the courts, the fight for justice for mesothelioma sufferers is far from over. There remain 2 important areas of the law where reform is needed to achieve greater justice for these sufferers. This is in the area of provisional damages and in Sullivan and Gordon damages. I applaud and commend the Honourable Kate Doust for introducing the Asbestos Diseases Compensation Bill into this chamber in order to rectify these deficiencies in the law. However, I am dismayed that this bill has still not yet passed despite being introduced some 3 years ago. The plight of Whitnoom workers has been immortalised in the classic Midnight Oil song, Blue Sky Mine. The lyrics of the song remain chillingly relevant today, which state, "And if the Blue Sky Mining Company won't come to my rescue, if the sugar refinery company won't save me, Who's going to save me? I sincerely hope that my fellow colleagues from all sides of the chamber will re-listen to this classic song and take the time to carefully consider the plight of asbestos disease sufferers and pass legislation which will help to achieve greater justice for these people. My time in this Parliament will only be short. Therefore, I will work as a priority to advocate for this law reform to seek greater justice for the sick and the dying. I would also like to use this opportunity of my inaugural speech to encourage people to be engaged with, to be active in, and be connected to their local community. My love for my local community led me to running for and being elected to the City of Vincent as a councillor in October 2013. In this role, I represented the inner city areas of Highgate, Leederville, Mount Lawley, West Perth, North Perth and Perth. Whilst it is with regret that I've had to resign from the council as a consequence of entering state parliament, I am proud of what Vincent Council has achieved in the past 3 years. At the time of being elected, Vincent was facing very uncertain times, and the government's proposed local government reform threatened the very existence of the City of Vincent as a whole. People power pushed back, and through a sustained community-driven campaign, thankfully the community's will prevailed. Instead, we as a Vincent Council pushed our own reforms which focused on good governance. We instituted a developer's contact register, a councillor's gift register, and banned councillor travel. We focused on sustainability and greening measures, on increasing our green canopies by planting more trees, and we invested millions in bike infrastructure. We encouraged residents to turn their verges into lush native gardens through the Adopt a Verge program. We built a terrific nature playground at Braithwaite Park. We created public space at the Mary Street Piazza on Beaufort Street. And we built an area for kids, teenagers and office workers alike at the Oxford Street Reserve in Leederville. It is humbling that our efforts did not go unnoticed and that the City of Vincent is now rated the #1 local government amongst 25 West Australian councils as both a place to live and as a governing organisation. Vincent is a cohesive, progressive and workable inner city council and is a shining illustration of local government at its best. Whilst my fellow councillors came from differing political persuasions, and of course we did not always agree, we debated issues on the merits and always did so with the best interest of our community at the forefront of our minds. Of course, all of the achievements I have highlighted were only made possible by the dynamic, energetic and steadfast leadership provided by the Mayor, John Carey. I thank John Carey for his leadership and I'm very hopeful that he will make a terrific state member for Perth come March next year. That brings me to my newest and most life-changing role prior to entering Parliament, and that was becoming a mother when my baby daughter Matilda was born earlier this year. She's the sunshine of my life and has brought so much happiness and joy in just a few short months. I was on maternity leave and the primary carer of the then 5-month-old Matilda when I found out I would be entering state parliament to fill the casual vacancy created by the Honourable Ken Trappers departing. At the time, I was breastfeeding her exclusively, and the thought of returning to work full-time with the long parliamentary sitting hours involved seemed daunting. Being a mother of a baby has presented a particular set of challenges in entering Parliament. These challenges have included the need for childcare, the need for facilities to express and store milk, and options to breastfeed. These are the same challenges many women face when trying to juggle family life and work. I am more fortunate than most to have the support of close family, access to childcare, and a good wage, which has made my admission to Parliament possible. Patrick and I now have a small village helping to raise our little daughter. Thank you to my mum Maxine, to Ileana and to Katie for helping with Matilda. And I recognise all of the grandparents, the early childhood educators and other carers out there assisting with childminding for working parents. Your efforts are truly appreciated. It is important that further inroads are made to ensure that the West Australian Parliament is inclusive and more diverse. No longer is it tolerable that women be underrepresented in Parliament and in leadership roles. A real and tangible way forward in this regard is to modernise the standing orders to allow for nursing mothers to bring infants into the chamber. Other jurisdictions in Australia have amended their standing orders to provide for admission to the floor of the House of an infant being cared for by a mother or a member. The equivalent standing order in the WA Legislative Council standing orders is Standing Order 97. This order deals with the manner in which strangers may be admitted to the floor of the Council and the requirement for strangers to withdraw from the chamber during a division or when ordered by the President. In 2016, the time has come to change antiquated rules and truly have a family-friendly parliament. Parliamentarians who care for small infants should be allowed to breast or bottle feed their babies in the chamber. In particular, women who choose to breastfeed in Parliament should not be subject to criticism or ridicule, as we have seen overseas. There is no sensible or just reason to retain outdated rules which make life as a parliamentarian more difficult for women. Just last week, it was the 4-year anniversary of Julia Gillard's infamous misogyny speech. This speech received global attention as it shone a light on the sexism our first female Prime Minister faced every day. It should be recognised that many women in public life face extra scrutiny, and this adds an additional barrier to women seeking public office. With the rise of social media, short media cycles, and increasing editorial commentary, this scrutiny on women appears to be unfortunately growing. Don't be too old, but don't be too young. Don't be too timid, but don't be too outspoken. Don't be a mother, but also don't not be a mother, are all too common themes we hear time and time again. That is why I'm so proud to stand in this chamber today, a member of the Labor Party, a progressive party, and a party that supports women. We are a party which has affirmative action and supports women getting into leadership roles. Just looking around this chamber, I am delighted to see that 8 of the 11 Labor members are women, and of all of the state Labor MPs, 47% are now women. This truly is a telling figure. However, our path to gender equality is far from over. In 2016, men in Australia are still paid on average about 20% more than women. The number of women on ASX 200 boards is only 23%. There are still 20 ASX 200 boards which have no women at all, and another 60 which have just one female board member. Recent studies have shown that girls receive less pocket money than boys, and almost 40% of single women will retire into poverty. Those who have gone before me in this chamber have also spoken about the gender pay gap and gender equality, and it is incumbent that we should continue to do so until gender equality is achieved. Colleagues, we need to comprehend what the barriers are which limit female participation in order for us to shatter these barriers down. We need greater access to flexible work options, better access to paid maternity leave, including superannuation, and greater access to flexible, affordable childcare, including after-school and vacation care. We also need to recognise the value of the caring industries and strive to increase the pay of our lowest paid workers, including early childhood educators. One of the most widespread barriers we need to address is the unequal distribution of unpaid care and domestic roles, both in the home and in the community. The reality is that many men have the luxury of having partners who work part-time or not at all to take care of the home front, and in most cases, women don't. Often cited as the second shift or the double burden, in male-female couples where both partners have paid jobs, overwhelmingly women on average spend significantly more time than men on household chores and caring work. Women are returning home from work to do more tidying, more planning, more remembering, more making of lists, more picking up toys, more closing of cupboards, more tucking in of children than their male partners. The good news is that these attitudes to these outdated gender divisions are slowly changing, and in particular, there is a great deal of support that men should be as involved in parenting as women. One practical way we can make a move closer in this direction is to ensure that baby change facilities are made available in male restrooms. So, before I end, some final thank yous. Thank you to my staff, to Emily, to Alex and to Marcus. Thank you to the President of this House, the Clerk and all the staff here at Parliament who have made me welcome in my first weeks of Parliament. Thank you to Patrick, my partner, an amazing dad and the love of my life. I am so happy that we can share the joy of our little family together, and I thank you for all of the support and encouragement you provide. Patrick, I love you and happy birthday for tomorrow. In wrapping up, let me say once again that it is an absolute honour and privilege that I take a seat in this House as a representative of the North Metropolitan Region and as a member of the Labor Party. I'm looking forward to representing the people of the North Metropolitan Region in this Parliament over the coming weeks. And when this chamber resumes again next year, I very much hope to be taking a seat in a Mark McGowan Labor government.
Congratulations and best wishes.